Good morning, Mustafa. Thanks so much for joining me today on BioBlast.
It is my pleasure.
So I'm Devin Zeidelman, Director of Scientific Real Estate Advisory for Scheer Partners. Today we have Mustafa Al-Adhami, who is the founder and chief executive officer of Astek Diagnostics. A lot to talk about today. Obviously, never enough time. But Mustafa, you are a spin out of UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and in particular, you have a lot of experience in sort of the device, maybe DOT, device of things. But with that being said, we'd love to get a better understanding of just your professional journey and sort of the arc of your career and giving folks a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah. I'm originally from Iraq, born and raised there. Went to high school there, but because of the war, I had to leave. So I did mechatronics engineering for my undergrad. It was a double degree from Jordan and then Germany. Um, I did robotics for about 6 months, but it was not like mentally challenging, I guess. So I thought the right thing to do is, do a PhD, be like an inventor rather than, an engineer. So that's when I came to the United States. I came to NBC and did my master's and PhD in mechanical engineering, but really the focus was biomedical um, engineering. So I did study blood hemodynamics and how you could find and separate bacteria from blood, which is a very, very big challenge.
When you started Astek Diagnostics, 2021,
Yeah.
tell us about, just sort of how you began to envision the technology, some of the motivations for creating the technology as well.
Yeah. Dude, I just wanted to be a professor. That's all I wanted. And I finally got an offer to become one. So that's when my grandfather got sick and he had a UTI and it took doctors 4 days, three different attempts, three different antibiotics with him. And then finally the culture came back 4 days later telling him, hey, none of the antibiotics you tried will actually work. And here's a fourth one that will work. But just watching him like be in pain, being delirious, and just like watching him go from a young 87-year-old to a much, much older one within like a week, it
Right.
was like something has to be done. If they had given him the proper antibiotic right away in the beginning, we would not have had to deal with it. He would not have been bedridden for 3 years now. So, I turned down the offer, to be a faculty member, and then I decided to start Aztec and focus on it full time. I got pretty lucky. I had the support of TEDCO very, very early on. So, like within a couple of months, I was able to get 150,000 from TEDCO, and that 150,000, both myself with my co-founder Kevin, we were able to take that sketch that I had and make it, a first prototype that kind of worked.
Yeah. So where are you now with the prototype? I know you've had some recent news, just in terms of the progress there.
Yeah, we have an alpha prototype, so that's the first prototype that looks like the product that has all of the functionality of the product. It's fully automated. So next step is take that and deploy it to the same hospitals that we've been working with to make sure that it still has the same accuracy. So our accuracy has been over 95% with these testing. So we just have to match it with the alpha. The alpha will become a beta. The beta is the one that we take to the market. So we're very, very close to getting through the FDA clearance process. We expect to be in the market within about a year to a year and a half, depending on how things progress.
Yeah. And so, relative to the larger sort of pharma or, developing therapeutics, the timeline for medical device is just a little bit more accelerated generally. And so you've only been in business for a couple of years. So tell me about just sort of like how you have accelerated development. You joined Y Combinator early on, as well as being a beneficiary of TEDCO funding. And so we'd love to get a better idea of just sort of, how you've really kind of in a span of 3 or 4 years, gotten to where you are today.
So I think someone gave me very good advice early on. It's like play to your strengths. And I'm very good at technology. I think I'm a pretty good scientist as well. So instead of going out and raising, so much money, I decided is like, okay, well, I can probably build a couple prototypes that I surrounded myself with very, very smart people, like Kevin is a very good software developer. I was very good at I'm very good at hardware. And then, Courtney and Chris, everyone joined and became like a very strong technical team. And I think just because we're very, technically inclined, we're able to build these prototypes. We're able to make it very, very quick, very cheaply. All we have raised so far is $6 million, and we're able to build this product in like, it's going to be 3 years, May 27th, right? So just playing to our strengths was really the right thing to do in our case.
Yeah. And so along that way, when you think about some of the risks you had to mitigate, some of the challenges you had to overcome, can you just talk me through a little bit of like, where were some of the speed bumps, if you take a milestone driven approach and trying to, for a lot of companies, bridge this, proverbial valley of death, but tell me a little bit more just about how you approach that.
And I think, so we didn't know what we didn't know earlier, I think, because like we were too optimistic about like how much money we needed, about the timeline, about all of these things, right? And this is when Y Combinator came into the picture, because it kind of transformed me from a pure scientist into a scientist founder, and to start thinking like a founder, prioritize your customers, prioritize your shareholders, because you need to talk to everyone. And what I realized is building a business is actually pretty simple. You talk to customers, make your analysis, you get it funded, and you execute. And I think we've been doing a very good job on all of these things.
Yeah. I mean, funding's a big part of it. You all have raised 6 million to date. You're on the forefront of raising some additional financial support. So, I talked to a lot of folks about just sort of the general macro environment and the capital markets in terms of fundraising for really the risk capital that's needed for a lot of these early stage pre-revenue companies in the life science space. But you've been successful, and so what lessons can you share in terms of your previous raises, and then as you think about your Series A or Series B, what are some of the lessons learned that now you're applying to future rounds?
Right. So I think I'm pretty lucky, because early on we set our milestones, right? And these are like, okay, if we have a prototype, we can do a seed round, right? We had a prototype and we showed that it worked, so we got a seed round. And the seed round was supposed to take us, for 13 months to increase our accuracy from 82% to 90%. But instead of 13 months, we were ahead of the milestone. So 3 months later, I found myself like, well, we have the 95% accuracy, so we beat that. And, we need to now build a product, and that increased our burn. Now, I have very good investors, very passionate investors about what we're building. So I reached out to them and I said, hey guys, I know you just invested 3-4 months ago, but here's what happened. I hit our milestones. So how would you feel about, doubling down? And quite frankly, I think 4 of the 5 investors that I reached out to ended up doubling down. And just to give a quick shout out to like Angel Kolchev from Anna Capital, they pretty much wired the money overnight. They wired us like, I think they're total $1 million now. And he was like, listen, don't slow down, keep going, keep your pace, and let's open like this quick bridge round so you don't slow down. And that was the bridge, that $3 million that we just closed. We were not supposed to have our alpha until Q1 next year, but we already have our alpha, right? So that's because of these guys that were, on our corner. I think the biggest lesson that I learned is investors do not invest in a time point. They invest over a line. So they want to see your progress. So cultivate relationships. Reach out for coffee. Guys, like, hey, can we grab coffee? Let me tell you about what we're building. And like, I'm not raising money. I'm not like, I just want to tell you what I'm working on. It's exciting, right? So that had worked for us. Right now, we just opened a Series A round, and this Series A is going to be $15 million. It should take us to the market. It should fulfill our first 7,000 tests that we have already signed contracts for. We're working on finalizing the a term sheet with a lead investor. So this is happening right now, and I expect to close this round before October. And October is very important for us because that's when we're going to have our first actual product sitting in a hospital. So it's going to be very, very significant. We're going to go very fast with clinical trials and usability testing. So we could get the FDA clearance by Q2 2025.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing great things. And so when you think about the strategics that you're working with, the hospital, the outpatient service providers, what has been their feedback and how have you approached them? Because a lot of times, scientists will have really strong ideas. They surround themselves, with like-minded individuals and maybe aren't thinking about what it takes in terms of building a marketing pipeline, rather a sales pipeline or a marketing and business development channel. And so what has been like your type of engagement to date with the strategics and just thinking about scaling the business?
So, business is all about customers, right? So to date, in the last 3 years I've been around, I've spoken to 430 potential customers, shareholders, like anyone who might have anything to do with the product. And that kind of like, you learn a lot from, just let people talk, let people tell you about their experience, learn about their problems. There's a book called The Mom Test that really, I have made it like the constitution of the company. It's like, this is how you should talk to customers. Don't tell them about your solution, just listen to their problems, right? So that's the first step. Second step is once you learn about their problem, verify your learning. So that's the second one. And the third one is try to sell and see if they buy, right? So when we're trying to figure out what our beachhead market is, we knew we had a powerful technology. So we talked to the urology practices, and what we learned was they have been relying so much on PCR. The reimbursement for PCR was very lucrative. It was very, very high. It would cost them like $200 to run a PCR test, but they get reimbursed like $1,500. So guess what happened? All urology practices started building PCR labs to test things in-house. And then, payers were like, hold on a second. This is what? This is not what we agreed on. They cut reimbursement. So now there's no solution for antibiotic sensitivity. And this is where we come into the picture. Okay, we're a much cheaper solution. Our reimbursement is not going to be as crazy as PCR, but you're going to we sell for 50, right? You get reimbursed at least $100. So for every test you run, you're making like 50. So that's enough incentive without being a burden on the payer, by saving money for the payer by preventing all these illnesses. So just talk to your customers. They are the business, really. Fundraising, money, we say people like, just go raise 24/7. That's not how you do it. You talk to your customers, build something they want, and money comes.
Yeah. And so the sensitivity of your product that you've built, really combining the hardware and software, has been, something that you've thought about with your co-founder, Kevin. You mentioned earlier, you've been really focused on the hardware, Kevin very much on the software. And so what have been some of the challenges with PCR just historically that, you're not so much disrupting the industry, but really thinking about changing and evolving the way that testing is being done for, quicker results for your proprietary technology, Jiddu?
Yeah. So here's the thing. The way this works, the way this has been working for like 50, 60, 70 years, right? You look at the symptoms for the patient, you identify what bacteria is causing that, and then you run sensitivity testing on it to see what antibiotic will kill it. Our whole idea was like, well, why do you need to identify the strain of bacteria? What if we can tell you what is killing the bacteria, right? So we created this system that can just tell you, hey, use this antibiotic for the patient. It's very, very quick. You can run your culture, right? You can run your PCR whenever they come back, but do not wait to treat the patient. Because when my grandfather was sick, as the patient's grandson, I did not care what the bacteria was. All I cared about that my grandfather had the right medicine to feel better, and we move on, right? Doctors can get whatever information they want from the culture, but do not wait. And I think that's what differentiates from all the other technologies. PCR, I think PCR are amazing. PCR is amazing, but if it is very expensive, who's going to pay for it?
Right. And so when you think about the current addressable market, I mean, you really would be a disruptor to that marketplace. And so with that being said, are you working with existing patients to really sort of get an understanding of the successes, or like what has been your level of engagement on the patient side to date?
Most of our this is B2B2C, right? So first step is you talk to the physicians, right? Because you understand the problem more, how would they buy? But just focusing on the patient, you realize that women actually get like 70% more UTIs, right? So, and that's when you have to understand what a woman needs, right? Because you're talking about a pregnant woman who's trying to avoid taking antibiotics because that affects the flora. The flora is how the baby gets immune system as they're born. So that's step one. It's like, well, even though it's a very small market for like OB, you still have to focus on it because this is our mission.
Right.
And then you talk about women, post-menopause who struggle with UTIs, recurring UTIs. And we don't talk about menopause for some reason, right? So the problem has not been addressed. And we're addressing that issue with the UTIs.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Obviously, we're never going to be as familiar with what those needs are.
Yeah.
But looking again at creative solutions to solve, it may be a niche market, but a large enough market where the economics and the viability of commercializing a device makes sense for your stakeholders, and that return on investment is there. And so when you look towards the future and the evolution of the space, maybe we can take a step back from specifically your product, but looking at the sector at large within med tech and medical device, from your perspective, looking at a lot of the efficiencies that have been gained and the productivity gains of including large data models, thinking about the adjacency of developing software. Right now, you have to think about not only does it work, which is a big piece of it, but there's risks involved with that. There's a level of care needed to protect data, host data, thinking about the convergences of security as well. So are those things that you have to think about on a day-to-day basis?
Not with the current version of our product, because we're, without getting technical, everything is done locally on the machine itself. So there is no cloud that we have to deal with. So the data is just local within the system. Now, having said that, we understand the future of like what they call medicine 3.0, which is figuring out there is a disease before the patient gets symptoms. This is where things are headed. This is what we need data for, right? And of course, we have to be a part of that. We have to be part of that, revolution. Otherwise, we would die. At that point, that's when we'd have to worry about the data. That's when we have to figure out how we can get the data, right? And one big thing that I have been kind of advocating, not only to my team, but also to our partners, is we need to predict if a patient is going to have a recurring UTI, right? Right now, there are no tools for that. And I think our device is the missing piece of data to that predictability model for readmission within 30 days, because hospitals do not get reimbursed. So it's a business case. It's also for the patient, right? I think that itself, data is going to be very important. Sorting the data, cleaning the data is going to be very important, and protecting that data, of course, is huge. It's crucial.
Yeah. And so you're located in Baltimore, and so you've obviously grown up in that ecosystem and that community, and have a lot of kind of tentacles into that marketplace. So when you look at peers in your space as it pertains to Baltimore and Maryland and the broader region, maybe when comparing it to other geographies that have really invested in the type of infrastructure that's required for med tech, what are some of the strengths of the region that is really keeping you here? And would love to just learn more about your approach to everything ranging from talent to just access to commercial opportunities, things of that nature?
So listen, I'm going to be honest with you, right? What drew me to Baltimore was Baltimore. I like the place. I was doing a road trip. I had the opportunity to pick anywhere I wanted to live in the United States, and I loved Baltimore. That's why I'm here. Strengths in Baltimore. I mean, it's a very small community. I feel like you could ask anyone's advice, and they would provide it. We have serious problems that we have to be honest about, right? There's no lab space in Baltimore. Like wet labs just do not exist. So that's a huge issue. Like it took us 6 months to find space, and we're right now we're at BW Tech South at UMBC. And if it wasn't for me just bringing up, hey, I need lab space, informally, right? They told me. We talk about talent, right? What is the percentage of the talent that is staying in Baltimore versus the talent, coming out of these greatest universities in the world, right? We have Hopkins, we have Maryland, we have other universities. These guys are leaving, right? I think I saw somewhere that Baltimore is like the population between like 18 to 33 is like shrinking for some reason. It's the only place on 95 corridor that's happening. We have to figure out how we keep these guys. I think Baltimore needs to lean a little bit more on its culture, right? On its identity. Because nerds love to sip lattes and talk about robots and how to change the future. We don't have that opportunity in Baltimore available. I mean, I'm talking like as someone who's passionate about Baltimore. You asked me about strengths. We have to talk about weaknesses because that's how we could improve. Having said that, I think the ecosystem has been growing. The ecosystem is improving. Even in the 3 years that I've been running Astek, things have changed. There are more opportunities for funding. We don't have much VC money here. There's cybersecurity, maybe some therapeutics, but really we need more of those. This has to grow organically. I joke and say every single team member at Astek, once we all sell and get rich, will become an angel investor because we know how hard it is because we have to support this ecosystem. This is our way to do it.
A big part of the ecosystem, especially emerging ones like Baltimore. I think there obviously is a dearth of lab space and the space that is available. If you're looking at West Baltimore, East Baltimore, the peninsula, is limited and it's costly, right? You can be in Montgomery County for relatively the same in a space that's built down and moving ready and flexible. And so, facilities as well, when you talked earlier about your cash burn, and sort of the ramp, it's a big line item, especially where you're assembling products. Medical device, is not something you can do in a garage. There's definitely regulatory considerations from the FDA, GMP, what have you. And so you obviously have made do for now from a facilities perspective. As you raise additional capital, my guess is that becomes a little bit more under the spotlight in terms of how you're scaling, where you're going to go. Right. And so you said it took 6 months to find your facility. For folks that are starting out, what were the considerations that you had to take into account thinking about, real assets and additionally thinking about the type of infrastructure that was required for you in developing a product?
I mean, in our case, we needed biosafety level 2 because we get patient samples, right? We get infected samples, and you have to keep those safe. You have to make sure everything is aligned. So that was the biggest consideration for us. We also needed to keep everything under in one building. So by the way, we are a Johnson & Johnson J Labs company. So we do have lab space in DC. We do have lab space at MedStar Health. But I didn't want the team to be all over the place because I think that impacts creativity and we don't get to have conversations on a daily basis. And then an important thing for us was price, right? As a startup, it's hard for us to pay $100 per square foot. And we went to places where they look, not so modern and they were expensive. We cannot afford that. We did not want to be there. But by the way, Scheer Partners helped us a lot. We worked with Matt Brady. He was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest thing for us was like, well, how can I get 3,000 square feet of lab space for as cheap as possible, as soon as possible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're hitting on some large trends that we hear about all the time, right? It's speed occupancy. I mean, you can't wait 6 months to continue R&D, right? That's just a fact. And,
This
cost
is a lifetime.
considerations.
It's a lifetime for startups. 6 months for a startup is like 10 years for a large corporation.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And, there's really, your company is very milestone driven too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had an interesting conversation a couple weeks back with someone that was on BioBlast.
Yeah.
And, they were speaking to the fact that, to your point, it's not only the 6 months it takes to move into space. We have been talking about, do you see a situation where, their company in particular would look at a shorter work week, but you have to be
Yeah.
at the bench. You have to be constantly pursuing technological advancement, and you have to do that in person, really. And so, what he was saying at the time was that, in particular, you also have competition. And so even the 6 months it would take to find space, that gives your
Yeah.
competition an opportunity to catch up or to get past you as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We don't have 6 months. We really don't have 6 months. And not just that, by the way, we don't work on our schedule. We work on the bacteria's schedule, right?
Mm-hmm.
For us to be productive on Monday, we have to be here Sunday, right? Because we need
Right.
to grow the bacteria overnight for all that bench testing that's done. So it I'm glad we have space now.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised, and you might be able to answer this question, is why isn't there lab space with this so much demand? All these startups that are looking, like anytime I talk to anyone, they're looking for lab space. So why are we not investing in these facilities?
Yeah. I mean, I think initial reaction, just given the current economics, raising capital is hard for anyone, including real estate owners and sponsors.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, not only that is finding the equity to source a project, it's finding the right type of space that has the right bones, that is convertible. I mean, if you're certainly considering ground up development, I mean, Wexford's and Connect Labs will be there, operated by CIC. I think that's a great opportunity. We own City Garage, our sister company, South Duval. And, the launch board has been really successful there with Bob Story and the group. But, I think it's when you look at debt and then you underwrite a deal, it's not so much the want. I think the desire is there. I think the challenge is, there's a need to pre-lease to a specific amount.
Yeah.
Your LTV has fallen since the heydays of 2020, 2021, your loan to value. So you're raising less debt, you need to come up with more cash up front. And then, from a price perspective, it really is a tenant's market right now. I think, our team will certainly convey that to folks. And so what that means is, despite this high demand, the supply, at least in Baltimore, is constricted. And so, cost of construction is higher. There's a shortage of labor. And so you would think there'd be a downward, push on rents, like a downward sort of pressure on rents, but really, if anything, they're continuing to rise. And so I think just, some of the challenges come to the fact that, it's just a difficult environment for a lot of different assets in real estate, but, we need to find a way to make it happen. I know, Controller Brooke Lehman has convened a group of leaders to think about that as it pertains to Baltimore. That was a great meeting we had a couple of weeks ago. And at the end of the day, I think we'll get there. It's just going to take a matter of time, and it's going to take, the likes of a institution or someone that really wants to plant a flag to build out the ecosystem. And I'd argue that, that's something that we want to be involved with here at Scheer Partners. And, we want to see companies like you have the ability to grow.
Absolutely. I mean, but this is not a new issue. If you look at, I think 2017, 2018, there was like this whole committee that met with Governor Hogan, and one of the 10 items that say how can you grow the ecosystem was having lab space. So I mean, I'm seeing more and more, happening. I think we Scheer Partners. By the way, you guys were willing to help us build BSL2 labs at City Garage, and that viable options for us. But yeah, I think also organically things will change. I think things are changing, and they will continue to change and more rapidly.
Yeah, and I think it's the organic growth that really moves markets. I mean, you're
Yeah,
trying to attract net new business attraction is a key part of economic development, which is my background. But at the end of
yeah,
the day, it's really it's making sure you, and you said this earlier, that you're keeping home the individuals,
yeah,
ignited talent, the ideas that are coming out of the likes of Hopkins and Fast Forward, which is an incredible incubator,
yeah.
coming out of University of Maryland, coming out of UMBC and elsewhere. And so I think, we can't just stop and wait. We have to be proactive. We
Mhm.
have to continually engage private and public sector partners to ensure that we're thinking about this intentionally and
Totally.
strategically, because as you know, it's not a 2 or 3 or 5 year fix. This is building out an ecosystem for 10
Yeah,
and 20 and 50 years. Technology and science right now is ever evolving. So
yeah.
it's even hard to fathom where we'll be in 50 years.
It's
It could
yeah.
look very different.
I have no idea. Yeah, no, it's gonna be very, very different. It's very exciting times. I hope I'm around to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that is the community, right? And so you all have been nominated as a finalist for the BioBuzz Awards. We're looking forward to celebrating that with you and your peers. But what does it mean to be nominated as a finalist?
It's nice. Listen, I building a startup is really hard, and you have to roll the punches. So every now and then, it's good to celebrate something. So I really appreciate BioBuzz, their initiative with you guys, and I took it as a nice opportunity for my team to, have a night out to bond together. It's always really, it's good to be recognized. It's good to know that people out there know that we've been working very hard, especially that we're solving a problem that will impact everyone's life in the future.
Yeah, very well said, Mustafa. And we really appreciate you spending time with us on BioBlast. And it's been a great conversation.
Yeah, dude. You should stop by sometime. We can show you around, could, have coffee and you meet the team as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. This wasn't included earlier, but Mustafa and I share a bond over coffee and feeling the need to be caffeinated. So
Oh, dude, yeah,
uh,
let's go.
I'll definitely take you up on that. And for everyone out there, Mustafa, the founder and rather co-founder and CEO of Astek Diagnostics, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.